Okay, I think we will make a start. I think we've probably got numbers that reasonably match those that accepted the webinar. So welcome all, and thank you for sparing the time this afternoon to join today's webinar around delivering Milestone 3. Thank you. Just to move on to next. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Giles Claydon. I'm the Deputy Programme Manager on the programme supporting Keith Clark. And as some of you who may have been on the playbacks last week in terms of the replan know, I've been quite heavily involved in the round 3 replan consultation that's currently ongoing at the moment. In terms of today's webinar, it's most importantly an opportunity for our participants to clarify any queries that you may have about your response to the replan round 3, and in doing so, support the programme's unconditional approval of Milestone 3, which was conditionally approved back in November. We'll be dedicating much of this session towards answering any questions that we receive during this. And what we do want to do is make sure everybody feels prepared in providing the evidence to support your responses to round 3 of the replan. So looking ahead to the agenda this afternoon, I will briefly talk you through just a reminder of Milestone 3 and why it's important. I'll then hand over to Pete, who's our Readiness Assessment Lead, who'll provide a summary of the Readiness Assessment 2 findings and explaining the background behind our conditional approval of M3 at the PSG board that took place in November. I'll then hand you over to Keith, our lead delivery partner program manager, who'll subsequently provide an overview of the revised criteria for M3, and he'll emphasize the importance of yourselves as participants to submit delivery plans via the replan round 3. We'll then finish up with a reminder of how to request support and the range of channels available to you as participants to engage with the programme, particularly over the next fortnight as we seek to finalise the round 3 consultation. I'll then hand over to Ewan, who will facilitate the questions. And as you probably saw on the previous slide, the majority of the time that we're dedicating this morning will be for questions. We've set up Slido, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and the password for Slido is #MHHS. And just a final reminder as well for this call, we will be recording this webinar. The slides will be published and a full QA will go out in the clock and also on the events page of the website. I should say, although we've got Slido set up, if you do have any absolute burning questions as we go through the slides, please feel free to raise a hand, but I think our preference would be to present the materials at the start and then really open it up to an extended Q&A at the end. So I know you've just had a preview of my next slide, so if we could now move on to the next slide. So what is Milestone 3? Well, Milestone 3 and the timing of Milestone 3 was coincidental with, or concurrent, I should say, with the target M5 milestone, where the programme baseline design was achieved. And at this point, we recognised that participants were probably either in or arriving into the design, build and test phase of their plans, irrespective of the fact that we were trying to declare an M3 milestone at the same point. So the timing of this was essentially a programme milestone. M3 from our side marked the official start of the design, build and test phase. And to achieve M3, we needed to see widespread and compelling evidence of design, build and test being entered into from across the industry. As Pete will explain in the next section, as we came to the M3 approval, I should say, in the November PSG, the supporting evidence that came through, and Pete will expand on this, was not completely compelling, and the PSG at that point felt only able to agree to a conditional approval. And for M3 to be approved unconditionally by the programme in March, 2023 this year, we will need to assess again, or make sure that we've got compelling evidence that participants across the industry are ready to start DBT by both examining the evidence coming through from the readiness assessment too, and we did get some solid evidence from participants at that point, but more particular through the consultation at round 3 in the replan. And there are several questions that are in the consultation for round 3 that are absolutely dedicated towards obtaining the evidence that we need to secure the M3 conditional pass in the March PSG. So why is it important? Well, I think probably as you've gleaned, we do now need the evidence from the industry participants that they have clear timelines, or that you have clear timelines to support design, build and test. We need to use that evidence and draw on that in order to take some robust decisions around M3, and also be confident as a way of underpinning the plan that is currently under consultation, that participants across the programme are ready to start or indeed continue with their design, build and test plans. And for those of you that were on the round 3 playback sessions last week, you would have also heard the message from Ofgem around the need for our plan to be as underpinned as fully as possible by the evidence that's come through, both through RA2 and indeed the replan, in order to make a very solid case for the subsequent CR that will need to go through and be approved to secure the baseline. So I'm going to stop there, and I don't see any hands up, so I'm going to move on to Pete, who is going to talk us through the Readiness Assessment 2 findings.
Thanks, Giles. Yeah, so for those I haven't met before, my name is Pete. I'm the Readiness Assessment Lead on the MHHS programme. And I'm just going to present this slide today almost as a bit of context to the specific criteria for passing Milestone 3 in the replan round 3. So I know a few of you will have seen a version of this slide before. So that this was put together off the back of Readiness Assessment number 2 back in November of last year. And the purpose of it was really to give the SRO and Ofgem the data that they needed to make an informed decision on whether or not to pass Milestone 3, the start of design, build and test. And the story of Readiness Assessment 2 was really that we had 2 key positives, but one area that needed improvement. And it was that area that needed improvement which sort of held us up and prevented the unconditional passing of Milestone 3 in the end. So to take the positive stories first of all, the first was the response rate. So it was a noted increase on Readiness Assessment number 1. So we went from 46 to 53% of responders. But it was really in terms of the market share that we were very pleased with the response rate. So we had 98% of the entire supplier market when measured by MPAN. We had 100% of DNOs, 100% of central parties, and 81% of agents. So that was very encouraging. And the story we were being told in the self-assessment, to come to the middle column here, was also very positive. So 60% of RA2 responders self-assessed as being ready to start DBT on time on 1st of November as planned. And again, the market share story was even more positive than that. So we had 100% of DNOs again, 68% of the supplier market, and expectations that would raise to 80% by the end of the year. So in essence, the participants on the programme felt that they were ready to start DBT on time, or at least they were in the majority of cases. The difficulty arose in terms of the evidence that was submitted to support that narrative. So we'd outlined 5 criteria for being ready to start DBT. And they were things such as having programme plans in place, having 6 points of contact submitted to the programme, having conducted design impact assessments and understood the TOM and the design as well. And on average, we found that most participants had met either 1 or 2 of those 5 criteria, but couldn't really be deemed to be fully ready to start DBT. And when we were at the November PSG, the area that was really honed in on was the programme planning element. So we had just over 30 plans submitted as part of RA2, and that's out of a roughly 170 participants that we sent out the survey to. So naturally, I think that was what was led to some nervousness on the part of the SRO and Ofgem in terms of passing milestone 3 unconditionally. And as you'll see in the slide that Keith is about to present, there's now a much greater focus on those program planning elements in replan round 3, and hopefully that's going to be the way in which we unconditionally pass milestone 3 this time round. But as I say, I'll let Keith go on to describe that in a bit more detail.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Keith Clark. I'm the program manager for MHHS program and the lead for the lead delivery partner. I'll just build on what Giles and Peter said in relation to the background to this M3 and these criteria. So as was mentioned, November PSG did sign off M3 milestone conditionally. There were various incarnations of M3 before that. There was party-specific M3 milestone for Electron Helix and for DCC, and then the final M3 incarnation was for all other parties, which was quite wide. And at November PSG, the evidence, as was suggested by my colleagues, was not sufficient to pass it. So we had the conditional milestone, and at that point, it was stated very clearly that the fact that we hadn't fully approved the milestone should not prevent participants from continuing their DBT-related activities or indeed starting them. So it essentially shouldn't be affecting participant progress. This is more about a governance point. And the condition was that the revised M3 criteria should be submitted to the PSG in December for approval, and then we would subsequently revisit them. So in December, these are the criteria that were agreed and will be used, as Giles mentioned, to revisit the M3 approval in March PSG and hopefully to fully and unconditionally pass it at that point. So the delivery timelines is the primary criterion. All responders to the round 3 consultation are required to submit a delivery timeline, which covers your own design, build and test activities in any format. And when we say a plan for design, build and test activities, ideally we're looking for proper delivery plans with a time schedule, main tasks and accompanying assumptions and risks, at least until the end of participants' DBT activities. But as a minimum, a timeline with key dates, such as when design and build will be completed, when pit testing started and completed, etc., will be sufficient for the purpose of supporting the M3 deliverable. And when we talk about DBT plans, it's always been very clear that DBT is quite a wide scope of activity, because participants generally are consuming the design that was approved in the end of October under M5. They'll be looking at the impact assessments, they'll be looking at procurement activities, they'll be identifying their main high-level and detailed designs. All of those things are part of the DBT plan before participants even get into developing code and building systems. So we expect DBT to cover all of those activities, and some of them, as I say, some participants will have done some of these already. I just mentioned that the round 3 process is looking for participants who are raising their hand for participations, we know. So therefore, we would be especially expecting potential SIP participants to be providing pretty good DBT plans at this stage. And secondly, we are expecting participants who are providing this delivery timeline to be able to declare that they have resources to support it. And for both of these criteria, we're looking for more than half of the round 3 responders to have met this criterion in order for the M3 milestone to be approved. There are a couple of dependencies also. The M5 design baseline was approved at the end of October with a clear plan to deliver a design work-off list. That work-off plan is expected to be completed by the end of this month and is being governed under DAG. And then the interim plan has been updated and it has been agreed with PSG previously. And I'll demonstrate in the next slide when we get to it what some element of that. One other point to notice: we do have only one program plan, This covers both the interim plan, the shorter term timeline, and also the replan, so that we've got one contiguous reference for delivery management, even in the absence of the rebaseline plan at this point. So if we go on to the next slide. So this is part of the updated interim plan that covers the timeline to reach the rebaseline plan, and this timeline was agreed in the November PSG. Currently, we are approaching the end of the round 3 consultation response period, which closes at 5 p.m. on the 31st of January. All participants are expected to respond per their licence obligations, and we will be tracking non-responders and declaring those to PSG, as we did in fact for Readiness assessments too, because we feel that it's important to be fair to the participants who are on the front foot, who are engaging and responding, and those participants would expect us to be chasing up those who are less engaged at this stage. And we are keen to identify why that's happening, and through the PPC team we are keen to support you and engaging and liaising with the programme increasingly well over time. We're pleased to see in the responses so far on round 3 that there are encouraging levels of interest and sit, and in the supporting delivery plan evidence that we have received so far is quite a high proportion of the responses that we have in our hands at this stage. After the round 3 response is closed, we'll be assessing the inputs, we'll be continuing to engage with participants, and we'll be developing a final draft version of the programme plan. And once PSG has agreed it, supported by IPA findings that we expect them to come up with independently, then the final draft plan, if it's agreed to be a good basis for the baseline, a change request will be published alongside the final artifacts, and this will provide all our participants with the opportunity to assess impact of the plan on themselves and to document this back to us via formal impact assessments. And assuming that the plan covers the Ofgem escalation threshold, Ofgem will be asked to approve the proposed plan in April, and to support that process, Ofgem will have been engaged in advance to ensure they're well positioned to make an expeditious decision. So that's the timeline. This is the part of the interim plan that is relevant, and actually, as I say, to pass M3, this plan needed to have been communicated, and I think you've probably seen this so many times, you're probably quite well used to it. We had a webinar on it previously when we did update the interim plan. This is specifically in relation to the replan element, and once we reach the replan and it's been agreed and we have a rebaseline plan, then there's no need for the interim plan any longer. Okay, that's it from me. Although I've got one more slide, so I'll carry on. So respond to round 3, as I mentioned, please do it, and you've got the link there to for the planning page if you're not yet familiar with the process. We have tried to make it rather easier this time through an online form, which should make it easier for you to respond and quicker for us to assess the information that you provide to us. For guidance on the delivery plan, we did provide an example template. If you're struggling to understand what you should provide by way of evidence through the round 3 process, then we have that example, and please contact PPC team if you'd like to learn about that. We have replan playback recordings, so on the round 3 plan, we've tried to bring that to life and walk people through it. If you've missed the plan playbacks, you can find the right one for your constituency and see them as indicated. I think we've demonstrated we're very accessible as a programme team. And for that reason, please contact PPC if you'd like to ask anybody in the team any question, and we'll try to come back to you as quickly as we can. And my view is that we're reasonably responsive, and hopefully you're seeing that. So there's a lot of support for you, both in the round 3 process, and particularly, I think we've tried to make it clear that this evidence that you provide to us by way of your DBT plans will be very helpful to give us confidence that you'll be ready, and to give us confidence that we are well into the design, build, test stage of the programme. That definitely is it all from me.
Thank you, Keith. And thank you to those who have submitted questions in the Slido. So I think it will go to me now. We do have 7 questions in the Slido. I'm going to go from sort of like the first who have asked questions and then go up to the most recent. So first question for the programme, why is M3 not detailed in the Milestone Register, MHHS Del 546, the Milestone Register version 3.0, delivered as part of the round 3 consultation documentation? Would anyone like to pick that up from the programme first? Keith, you're just on mute, by the way.
Thanks, Ian. Good question. I haven't checked to see whether it is or isn't, but milestones that have been passed are not in the Milestone Register, of course, and milestones which are in the interim plan, less so. The Milestone Register is a replan document for the forward plan. That's why it's not in there. That's the reason.
Thank you, Keith. Really helpful. Perhaps another question here for you, Keith, as well. What happens if the programme does not receive unconditional approval to pass milestone 3?
Yeah, well, we are looking at a number of inputs in terms of progression of the DPT phase of the programme. So round 3 will give us a lot of evidence about participants' progress and plans. If we don't approve fully and unconditionally M3, then the governance element of the programme is still incomplete, and we would have to follow up with participants who have responded and not provided plans. But it wouldn't materially stop the programme or affect participants' progress or programme's progress on DBT, but it would affect the risk profile. So I think based on reviewing, the reason for reviewing the milestone in March is to assess the subject and of the information that we have and the insight we get from that. My view is that we would then look at the risk assessment around the progression of DBT and participants' readiness and agree at PSG further actions. The whole point of going through a milestone and passing it or not is to understand the risk profile at that stage and to respond. So I couldn't say that it would stop anything materially, because we want participants to progress as quickly as possible, but it might well mean a conversation at PSG about how risks are presented and managed in relation to participants' readiness to reach the next stages of the programme. So it's a really important point of review. Hopefully it will give us cause to believe that the risks are lower because we passed the milestone. If we don't pass the milestone, it will suggest that some risks have either gone up or not come down as expected, and then the mitigations of those risks may need to be reviewed and agreed with PSG, and something new may have to be done. I can't be more specific than that, but that's the way governance works, and that's the reason for that milestone to be there.
No, thank you, Keith. That was really helpful, and hopefully that answered the question there. And I encourage you to sort of reach out to PPC if we can be of more assistance on that one as well. Still quite a few questions, and thank you for those coming in. There's about 9 more coming in, so coming quite thick and fast. If a participant is developing a detailed delivery plan and carrying out procurement, is this deemed as starting DBT, or do you need to be developing code as well?
Yeah, I think I answered that one when I presented. So for us, the DBT activity is everything that results from the design having been baselined. As I said earlier, most participants would go into an impact assessment of the impact of the design on themselves, on their estate, their target their current operating model. So there'd be an impact assessment. Many participants may well be doing procurement activities with their service providers if they have them. So all of that is part of it. High-level design, detailed design, before you even really get into significant building and coding. So all of that is part of the life cycle. It's the activities that result from the design having been baselined, essentially. So yes, it would include those activities.
Thanks, Keith, again. A question with respect to the deadline for when the revised criteria to meet M3 needs to be submitted by.
Not sure what that means specifically, but what we will do at the end of this month, when we have the round 3 responses, is look at whether we have sufficient evidence submitted to meet the criteria in the milestone, and if we don't, then between then and the March PSG, we will be following up with a targeted PPC campaign of engagement with participants to seek to get further information from those participants who have been unable to provide evidence. And hopefully, you know, in the ensuing weeks, we will probably get some more evidence as parties develop their DVD plans further. So there's still a further activity that we may well have to take, and that's our contingency plan in case we don't have the evidence to fulfill the criteria by the end of this month.
Thanks again, Keith. We just had a question that's been answered, but I just want to get for the rest of the sort of the participants present on the call in regards to the slide deck being shared. So as always, we'll be sharing the slide deck on the collaboration base, the website, and in the clock as well. So do keep an eye out on the usual communication channels there. Next question, what level of response are you expecting for replan round 3? And then the second part to the question, what is the escalation process for any non-responders? Well, obviously hoping for a good response and a high one, but Keith, any particulars you wanted to pick up on there at all?
Well, we're expecting everybody to respond.
In short.
So I wouldn't like to declare what I think the level might be, and that's more of a sweepstake, I would imagine, than anything else. But based on, we would expect and want a higher level of response than we have seen. So we can gauge on this programme levels of response to change request impact assessments, levels of response to readiness assessments. We want the best level of response for round 3 beyond all those levels we've seen previously. So if you have been responding to those other things, great, thank you. We want to be fair to you by encouraging other people to do the same thing. So ideally, we would want to see increasingly better levels of response to these kinds of things as we go through the programme and as the programme matures and as participants have gone past mobilisation and are really getting with the programme in all senses. So I have my own view about what the level of response may well be, but I'm hoping it will be exceeded. As far as escalation is concerned, well, over the period of the programme, we are tracking non-responses and we're looking for participants who are continually not responding. And that's a PSG matter. It's not for me to say what PSG might decide to do about it. My job is to make sure the information is available to PSG to make decisions on that basis. So all I can say is the information will be monitored and reported, and PSG will decide what the response might be. And it might be a response to this specific topic, or it might be a response over time based on participants who, you know, are not engaging in any respect. And probably, again, we've always said that the programme's job is to support participants. So we'd like to understand if you're not responding, why you're not responding, how we can help you to respond. What is it that we're not doing that we could do that make your job easier to respond? And you know, in that respect, the PPC team are in the vanguard of those kind of conversations that they have with yourselves, and are always asking how we can help you. So we're not trying to be punitive or aggressive in this respect. We are trying to help you to get better at being within the programme and working with the programme. This is a different industry model. It's an industry programme, and it's an industry facilitated and an involved one, and we hope it will be more so than any other programme like this in the past. So whatever we can do to help you is the best thing we can do. And reporting this stuff is primarily to understand what else the programme can do to help. Ultimately, it is within your obligations to also, you know, hold up your end by either telling us why you can't help us in this regard, or by helping us in this regard by responding.
Thanks, Keith, again. And just want to group that question with another one we received slightly earlier on. How many responses have we received to round 3 so far? So I know we have received some responses. Can we give particular details on the number we received so far?
Well, I won't give the number directly, but I think, Giles, unless you disagree, because you're probably closer to this than I am, I think we probably have about a third of the level we normally would expect to see already, which is great, because I mean, generally speaking, they all come in on the last few days of the process. Yeah. We're expecting quite a lot at the end, but actually, the signs are quite good, aren't they, Giles, at the moment?
They are good, and good completion across the questionnaire as a whole. as well. So I think the process seems to be working in a fairly straightforward way. And I think, to my knowledge, we've not received any sort of negative feedbacks around the consultation process this time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Giles and Keith there. A question with respect to SIT. Can we still participate in SIT if we decide we want to do so after the deadline of 31st of January?
Yes, yes is the short answer. What we wanted to know by the end of this month is who is expressing interest in SIT, and ideally evidence to support increased readiness for SIT. But even if participants express interest in participating, ultimately they may not be ready in time for SIT, because we all know that we're trying to get into SIT or start SIT by the end of October, and therefore, whilst there could be a long list of participants, it may well be that there'll be a shorter list of those that will be ready, and therefore we are keen to encourage on an ongoing basis through the conversations we're having with you over the coming weeks. If you are in a better position and actually have decided that you do want to be part of SIT, that would be good to know. There is a final kind of backstop milestone in the plan in April where we have to kind of decide these things fully. But the important thing is to know early, because we want to support you. Those that are interested in SIT will be particularly, we'll be looking at focused support for you to make sure that you are understanding the activities that you need to do to be prepared and ready for SIT, and helping to provide focused and targeted support to you. So for those people who are interested in SIT and have declared it, they'll get a lot more focused support from the end of January. Those that come up with or raise their hand later, great, we'll include you in that focused support, and we'll help you, support you to be most likely to be ready by the time the SIT should start. And there are, the preparation activities that we have to do before SIT starts, and that you have to do around environments and other things that have to be done earlier per the plan. And therefore, we want to provide that support and make sure that potential SIT participants can succeed in being ready to participate at that point. So yeah, the door will still be open, but the focus support will start from the end of January, when we're clear what population is likely to want to go that way.
Lovely, thank you again, Keith. We still have 6 questions, so hopefully trying to get through them. The next one I can probably actually address, and if you want to sort of expand on it, Keith, do let me know. But what formats are you happy to receive delivery plans in, and do you have any guidance on what makes a good, bad delivery plan? So we did actually produce a delivery plan template, which we can share with you. If you could please sort of reach out to your PPC rep lead to then share that with you, because obviously it's anonymous on here, so we can't actually tell, and we can probably share that with you with some of the sort of the caveats about the information in the plan. And in terms of what format, in that particular format, we've used a PowerPoint, but in the past we've obviously received Excel as well. And I mean, is there anything, Keith, you want to expand on that particular point there?
No, PowerPoint, Excel, Word. I prefer not scribbles on bits of paper or whiteboards, but yeah, it's something that shows the level of construction would be helpful. Thank you. No, to be serious though, we've been trying to be flexible. We would rather you gave us the information rather than had to create something specially for this purpose. Give us the information in whatever format you've created it. Our intention is not to put an onerous burden on you beyond that which adds value.
Yeah, certainly. Perfect. And yeah, like I said, just reach out to that rep or your PPC contact, and we're about to share that agreed delivery plan with you as a template. Next question, what are you doing about smaller participants that haven't responded to any of those readiness assessments or replan conversations? Is this a concern for the future? I think this is slightly picking up on an earlier one about in terms of non-responders. I mean, this is sort of obviously centered towards smaller participants. Was there any sort of particular advice or feedback you had for that area there, Keith?
No, as I said, the first reaction to non-responders is how can we help you to respond better next time, and those are the conversations the PPC will be seeking to have, and that list of non-responders is there to provide some focus for the PPC to reach out and ask what was the problem, and what can we do to help you respond next time. So it's really down to individual cases, and there can be all sorts of reasons why participants don't respond. And as I say, our first reaction is one of support. It's not one of, you know, get with the program or else. That's not the point. The point is we want you to be included. It's an inclusive program, and therefore, you know, that's why we have an effective PPC function that does reach out and talk to people. So I just reiterate, this is all about support and getting the highest level of engagement in a program which has a new model of industry engagement, and we would, you know, one of the tests of success of this program is higher levels of engagement than other programs that went before it. So we set ourselves fairly aggressive targets, and to do that, we're going to do it with you, in collaboration with you, and that's the psychology, and that's the attitude that we hope that we're displaying. And if we're not, let me know.
Yeah, thank you, Keith. And I mean, just to come on the back of that, completely with your points. And as the small supplier rep for the PPC team, I'm hoping I'm either meeting with you on a sort of monthly basis, but if you are looking for any more additional support, like I've offered in some of the monthly meetings, please do reach out to me, and we can sort of set up future meetings to sort of discuss any concerns and try to give you the support that you need as well.
I would also say that, of course, every constituency has a representative. We are encouraging constituents to engage with their representative in the larger communities. That's often an issue as well. So we're there to help, but also to support the reps. So, you know, there are various channels that you can use to engage.
Fantastic. 4 more questions. We have not procured our third-party service provider and will not complete by the 31st of January. Assume we can note this in our response.
Yeah, absolutely. You can state an assumption. So you may not have completed some of these activities, but you in the plans that you provide or the responses you give us, you can the better you specify the assumptions upon which you are basing your response, the better actually. Everybody's making assumptions, including ourselves, about what may or may not happen in the future. But yes, absolutely. I think the consultation questionnaire allows you to provide that information, and the more information you can give us about the assumptions upon which you're basing your answers, the better.
Yeah, super. Next question is in relation to some responses might be influenced negatively. So it says, given we are still waiting for some key documentation from PIT or for PIT and SIT, responses may be heavily influenced in a negative manner. Are you expecting this? Just before I hand over to, it looks like Jason's come on there. I think we are expecting the release of some of this documentation very shortly. But Jason,
Yeah. So there was a SIT scope document released to the SIT working group yesterday afternoon in advance of an extraordinary SIT working group on Tuesday. And this is intended to provide some guidance to participants on the scope of SIT, and it's set out on a role by role basis. So that should give you a much better set of information to work from for assumptions in planning for participation in SIT. Obviously, the ongoing discussions on SIT are happening in the SIT working group. So we've been through the broad phases. We're covering the SIT, and we're covering the scope, and that'll be subject to ongoing discussion. But we have set up the extraordinary SIT working group on Tuesday to walk through that scope activity. So that is the latest working documentation we've got. On PIT, we have also issued the PIT guidance document. So again, that gives the latest view out from the programme on PIT guidance, and that's again subject to discussion, review and development under the SIT working group. So I think, you know, as with all of this information, it's developing as we go. The working groups are the areas, are the places in which these products are being developed, and we would hope that you've got enough information through that development work to be able to make assumptions on the response to the replan.
We've always said that working groups are the place where a lot of the details around the plan are going to get bottomed out, and the re-baseline plan should follow the working group conversations about detailed delivery approaches. And as far as negative responses, I would hope, in fact, that when responding, if there's something you don't know and hasn't been provided to you, rather than focus on what you can't do, you tell us what you intend to do, and based on what assumptions, in the case where you may not have information that you need, because we're all in the same boat as we go through this calendar quarter. Working groups like the SIT working group, like the qualification working group, are across the SMEs and participants getting consensus about how some of this stuff will work in detail. So respond positively on what you do know, point out what you don't know, but respond on the basis of assumptions and state what those assumptions are. That would be the most helpful thing. Knowing what you don't yet know, which is something that we're aware of already, and why you can't do things, isn't really the spirit of the responses we're looking for.
Thanks both. Just sort of, we have another question that's come in that's related to PIT and SIT. I just want to quickly raise it. Where is the PIT guidance document? It was due on the 27th of January. Has it been released early? If so, what's it called? I can't find it on the collaboration base yet.
I'll go and ask the test team and see where that is and provide a response back on that. I'd have to go and have a look.
Thanks, Jason. We appreciate that. And thank you for being very speedy. Last question, guys. Thank you all for submitted questions so far. What split of suppliers do you anticipate taking the SIT route versus the qualification route?
What suppliers? All suppliers? We're getting of the responses we've got. We have a positive level of sentiment for SIT participation of the responses we have from suppliers, which is good to know and good to see. And thank you for those that have responded in that way.
Brilliant. Thanks, Keith. And thank you again for keeping that to time as well. So I just want to say thank you for all those who have submitted questions. If you are submitting any more questions on the chat, we'll be monitoring them and we can try to provide written updates after as well. Just to summarize and sort of finish up the webinar, so I hope you found it useful. These are the sort of communications channels and support that the program offers you. You've seen these before from previous webinars. We just wanted to draw your particular attention to the level 4 working groups, which both Jason and Keith discussed and how important they are in terms of bottoming out the plan. So please do try to engage with the SIT working group and the QWG where you can. If you aren't able to, if you would like to attend but you do not so, please contact the PMO team and we will forward the invites. Like I said, there is one on Tuesday next week. It's an important meeting and one we definitely encourage attending. Thank you again all for your attendance. If there's nothing else, I think I'll give you back a minute of your day from this meeting. Lovely. Thank you all. Have a great day and speak to you soon.
Cheers, Ian.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks.